Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome again to my set of videos. This time we're gonna talk about the great Ottoman Empire. 100 years without a Muslim empire or caliphate ruling the world, or part of it at least. This month we celebrate the 101 century of no caliphate, no Ottoman Empire, last trace of the Muslim Ottoman Caliphate. So today I want to talk to you about some things. I want to tell you, remembering this great Ottoman Empire in 100 years without having them amongst us, I want to remember not only the greatness but what led to the downfall of the Ottoman Empire as such, right? It is important to bear in mind that the Ottoman Empire was an empire that, like many Muslim empires before them, like the Abbasids, the Ayyubids, the Umayyads, the Ottoman Empire was an empire largely located or headquartered, let's say, with the capital in the former Eastern Orthodox capital of the Byzantine Empire, or Eastern Roman Empire of Byzantium, Constantinople. It's now called Istanbul, and it spread across all across Asia Minor, Turkey, the Arab Levant, the Arab countries, Mecca, Medina, some parts of Iran and Iraq, modern day Iraq and Iran, also North Africa, all the way up to Algeria. And really, to bring this to put things in perspective, really, what led to the end of the Ottoman Empire? What led to the end of an organized, structured Muslim caliphates in the world? You might have referred to the Ottoman Empire as the sick man of Europe. At some point it was the sick man of Europe because it was in the decline. It was a slow process of decline that led to the downfall eventually and the fall of the Ottoman Empire on the hands of the Allies in the First World War. I want to remind you all that the Treaty of Lausanne in France on 24th of July 1923, rectified later in August 1923, that's 100 years ago, actually put an end to the formal, let's say, title of the Caliph at the time. So I've got some points here written down that I want to talk about, some topics I want to cover. First of all, the World War I, First World War, starting in 1914. There's some points that I'm going to cover, like the Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1916 between the British and the French to divide the Arab worlds and the Ottoman Empire. Also, I'm going to talk about the Arab Revolt of 1916 and the, of course, betrayal of the Arabs to the Ottoman Empire on the hands of the great British spy Lawrence of Arabia. Yes, sir. And of course, I'm going to talk about the Young Turks Revolution, led by Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, allegedly the father of the Turks. Obviously not, but we will explain that. And I will eventually mention some reasons for the decline of the Ottoman Empire, leading to its final downfall, and also the contribution of the Balkans Revolt or War 1912. Okay. Quick point to remember. At the same time that this was happening in the First World War, it was also when the Balfour Declaration was signed for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in the modern state of Israel, Palestine, 1917, by Arthur Balfour, UK Foreign Secretary. So I'm going to try to link this all up in a nice story, in a nice conversation, let's say, because although I'm the one talking, you probably have a lot to say about this, and I welcome you to write comments on it, either if I'm publishing this on Facebook or on YouTube, my YouTube channel. If I get positive responses, I'll do more videos. If I get negative criticism, I'll respond and I'll do more videos. But if I don't get any responses or any feedback, I probably won't do this again. So let's see how it goes. Um, Now let's start with what led to the sick man of Europe getting sick. So a bunch of things that were happening in the Ottoman Empire at the time. Obviously, it's a very big empire, expanded throughout a vast, wide territory around the world, and one of the problems that the Ottoman Empire was facing was high illiteracy rates, lack of education, while on its counterpart, the European superpowers, Russia, France, Great Britain, were investing in education, we're growing, we're advancing, we're doing inventions. It is true that a large portion of the population of the Ottoman Empire was in fact illiterate or uneducated. That contrasts very heavily with the contributions that the Ottoman civilization did to the world, really, in terms of arts, sciences, law, etc. Right. Another thing that contributed to the downfall of the Ottoman Empire was obviously, not so obviously, but a high dependence on the agriculture, let's say, and farming, opposed to, and the guild-based economy, let's say, as opposed to an economic system by the European powers that was more focused on industry, production. It was going in a different way, right? This also led to the fact that the Ottoman Empire had a large amount of debt towards its European counterparts, which would always lag it behind eventually. I'm talking about late 19th century, eventually 20th century, right? So now that we've talked about the things that were contributing to the downfall of the let's say Ottoman Empire from the inside, let's look at it from the outside as well. A mix between the outside and the inside. Let's say that the influence of the certain elites in the Ottoman society were influenced a lot by the secular, let's say, modern concept of that was being followed in France and such, and viewed France as an ideal, right? And they tried to imitate that as much as possible. This elite eventually led into what was happening with this whole revolution internally, and some revolts happening throughout the Ottoman Empire. Obviously, the most important was that of the Young Turks Revolution of the Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. There was also notable revolts all around the region that contributed to and were happening either before First World War or on the way to the First World War. There is the Balkans Revolution or War, started by Montenegro, which is formed a Balkan League with Bulgaria, Serbia, Montenegro, and Greece. That eventually reduced a lot of the territory that the Ottoman Empire had on the eastern Balkan region. That's the western side of the Ottoman Empire, but the eastern side of eastern part of Europe. Also, it is true that Russia favored this Balkan League. So, not to get too much into history about what contributed to whatever, it is true that as any nation, any empire had friends and enemies, right? But the biggest mistake to my mind that they made was entering World War One. I mean, it's true that they had a secret agreement with the Germans, with the German nation, and the German nation entered the First World War, as some of us know. A person called Rifat Pasha, he was an Ottoman let's say an official. He recommended someone else called Enver Pasha not to enter the First World War, and he didn't take by his counsel. That would have been a turning point, because that war wasn't really the Ottoman War. It was an Allies war, and they got dragged into that war to support their allies, when they should be worrying more about consolidating and taking care of what they had internally as such, right? Some things that I want to bring to the attention that are happening during World War One First, as we all know, the Arab Revolt of 1916, spearheaded by Al-Sharif Hussein ibn Ali. He had expectations of becoming the rightfully guided a caliph of the Muslim Empire, and through the influence of the famous British spy, Lawrence of Arabia. I like to call him a spy and agent because at the end that's what he was. He was sent on a mission to make sure the Arabs separated from the Ottoman Empire. We are talking about the Arabs in the Gulf area as such. By the way, Sharif Hussein was later to be defeated in 1924 after the revolt and the separation of let's say the Arab countries from the Ottoman Empire. Was later defeated by the reigning family of Saudi Arabia, modern day, Al Saud, with their Wahhabism, right? Personally, I'm trying to be as objective as I can historically. I don't want to give too many personal opinions about my stance on whether this is right or wrong or this is justified or such. Let's look at things in perspective, right? History teaches us things, teaches us that if we stick together as a unity, as a nation, as an ummah, as a Muslim ummah, things tend to go well. We saw that in Al-Andalus in Spain. We saw that throughout many civilizations and nations of the Muslim world, right? I especially focus on the Muslim world because this message is first and foremost to myself, to kind of remind myself of the path that we're supposed to follow, but also it is important to take into consideration that history has a funny way of repeating itself, right? When you put so much trust on foreign powers and less on what's been guiding your people for centuries and centuries, something will eventually go wrong, right? For example, one of the ideals of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, and he eventually implemented that, he wanted to erase that Muslim identity of Turkey, modern day Turkey, Ottoman Turkey at the time. He banned, for example, the adhan to be done, the Muslim call to prayer to be done in Arabic. He tried to implement that to be done in Turkish, in the Turkish language. He banned the Muslim attire like the hijab. He tried to change, and he changed the alphabet or the script of the language in Turkish from Arabic, right to left, to Latin, left to right. To my mind, he changed the game completely. Not a lot of people agree with Kemal Ataturk. I personally don't. I personally don't see that a secular state was the right answer towards taking Turkey or the Ottoman Empire to the future. It is true that a consensus of democracy and the right division of powers and such would have been accurate, but being reasonable and accurate to that regard, it changed the game frame, the way we view the world now completely, right? Some of the things that were happening during the First World War was the famous Sykes-Picot Agreement, right? The Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1916, during World War I, was a secret agreement that was basically done by two generals, one British and one French, Sykes and Picot. They wanted to divide the Arab lands of the Ottoman Empire, the Arab section of the Ottoman Empire, into British and French zones of control, right? In parallel to this agreement, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, we have in 1917, 1 year after, the Balfour Declaration by Arthur Balfour of the UK Foreign Secretary at the time, where he promised basically the establishment of modern day Israel, the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people. It's funny to see how it is true to know how to say mea culpa, right? To know when to say it's our fault as Muslim people, Muslim nation, or Muslim ummah, that we didn't stick together, that we didn't follow the principles of justice and equality as such as it should be done. But it is true, as usual, colonial powers, the Western great empires, and the empires which I despise the most historically are the French and the British, especially for the atrocities they've done all around the world, really, but especially in our region, is that there's always a plan there. There's always a plan to divide and rule, and there's always a plan to make to not allow the Muslims grow great again. And that was part of the reason why the modern day state of Israel was created, so that there was a virus there in the middle of the region that would prevent the resurgence of a united Muslim nation, right? I want to talk about nation also because of the figure of nation states and nationalism, right? Pan-Arabism, Arab nationalism, whatever you want to call it. This concept didn't happen during the Ottoman Empire. It is true that people spoke languages from different people, they have different ethnicities, even different religions coexisted peacefully, Jewish people, Christians, non-religious people. Everybody coexisted well, right? But the concept of having nation states, divided, segmented parts of the Arab world, Muslim world, that's another reason that led to the downfall. I personally don't believe in the world of borders, of identity, of a different identity. We should view ourselves as Muslims first, and then citizens of a specific nation second. That's my opinion. Even if it's, let's say, on a practicing level of faith, it's a personal thing. But these are things to bear in mind, right? Because with this I'm going to try to end, because I know I've gone over 17 minutes, and I intended to do 5. So look at me here. Being a person that comes from different backgrounds, right? I'm half Egyptian, half Spanish, born in the UK. First and foremost, I'm Muslim, and I like history, I like politics, I like international relations, and I like to learn from the mistakes of the past, and that's very important. So my message to all of you out there is, I hope that it doesn't take us another 100 years, century, to remember the mistakes of the Ottoman Empire, to remember to follow the true path, and ultimately remember to stick together, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, which is stick together on the rope of God and do not separate. I open a discussion, I open a comment section, open to everyone, people for, people against, non-Muslims, Muslims, Turks, non-Turks, whatever, right? I mean, so long as we keep it civilized, educated in a sense, right? I've got family and friends following this stuff, so I don't want to have to deal with uncomfortable situations. But if I have to, I will deal, so it's cool. I hope this serves as food for thought. I created a channel on YouTube where I'm eventually going to be posting more videos if people like what I'm doing. Some stuff about religion, some stuff about politics, some stuff about other educational, historic things. And yeah, that's the content that really I wanted to share. Thank you for listening, and as usual, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.